It's great to see you, and welcome to Bloomberg TV and radio.
Thank you for having me.
As a member of the EU, as a NATO member, are you encouraged or discouraged by this never-ending series of talks with Russia?
We have to be optimistic. It's an imperative of the diplomatic world these days. But Romania's stance has been very clear from the beginning of the war and will continue to be clear. We need to both increase the support for Ukraine to have the resilience that they need through this process, especially through this horrific energy attack that they've had. We have citizens freezing in their apartments, and the international support is very important to help them go through this winter, but also to increase the pressure on Russia. And in that respect, we have just finished the 20th package of sanctions at the European level. And we see, especially that moments when we align with the United States in sanctions are moments that increase the pressure on Russia. For example, when they have a decreased profit from their oil sales, or when they have a decreased freedom of movement for their shadow fleet. All those are very important factors that increase the pressure, because our history with Russia shows us that you need to pay attention not to what they say, although that is also important, but specifically to what they do. And they have broken every rule that was ever written in the laws of war, and those are not signs of a country that wants peace. Those are signs of a country that needs to be forced into peace negotiations by the economic pressure that we collectively create.
Do you worry that the United States will not be there when needed as a supporter or even leader of NATO, that this is something that the Europeans are going to have to handle on their own? You hear a lot of bluster from the Trump administration, yet if you're taking him on his actions, he's actually been good for NATO. How do you see this right now, especially following this whole flap with Greenland? Where's the president?
So my first day on the job as a Minister of Foreign Affairs was the Hague NATO summit. So my first day on the job was the meeting with Secretary of State Rubio, the Foreign Affairs Ministerial, and then with President Trump at the summit. Why do I mention that? Is because I think that has been a key turning point for NATO, that sometimes Europeans tend to forget when the heated conversation moves from that. 5% commitment on the NATO budget is something essential. We've committed to that in Romania and always stepped up our defense expenses, but the fact that almost all allied members have committed to that creates a stronger deterrence force, creates an economic incentive for our defense industries, and I think creates a stronger transatlantic tie, because the United States has been very clear on the idea that the European allies that we should take more of the burden sharing, and we agree on that. I do not see, though, a path forward in which our transatlantic partnership doesn't remain essential. And I think the United States understands that.
Well, we're seeing some of that expose itself in this critical minerals project that you're here to talk about. Before I ask you about that, though, where are you with Ukraine? Is this war going to end this year? Does Vladimir Putin deserve more meetings?
I think everyone is ready to do whatever it takes to achieve a sustainable peace. And what do I mean by a sustainable peace is not just a temporary ceasefire, but also guarantees that the conflict is not going to start again immediately, or that new territories are not going to be attacked. And I want to be very frank about this. We have had Crimea. And Romania and Poland and some of the countries that have experienced the complicated relationships that we've had in our history with Russia, we have been very clear when Crimea happened more than a decade ago that we need a stronger stance as an international community. And I think what we see now through the Russian-Ukrainian conflict, obviously the unprovoked Russian aggression towards the honest, courageous citizens of Ukraine, is something that could have been avoided if we would have been more firm in Georgia, if we would have been more firm in Crimea more than a decade ago. So to answer your question, I think we need to create more economic pressure, and I think we need to create a collective support. And in that regard, we are now discussing in NATO what is the best allocation of the funding that has been fundraised through the Pearl Initiative, which is the United States proposal for European contribution to defense procurement for supporting the resilience of Ukraine.
Minister Toiu, talk to me about Project Vault, because that's largely why you came here, as well as having meetings with Congress. This is a number of countries, a couple of dozen countries involved here with $12 billion in seed money to create a critical minerals stockpile. This is obviously long game for you that will likely exceed the length of this administration. How important is this to counter China?
Absolutely essential. And you have many projects coming out of the European Union, and you have many projects coming out from the United States, Project Vault, Project Forge. And I think it's very important that we came together. We were 5 ministers of foreign affairs from the European Union with the commissioner, and also obviously more than 50 countries across the globe. We need to discuss the rare minerals issue from Romania's perspective from 2 points. One of them is that we are a resource-rich country. We have essential projects in magnesium, graphite, copper, and we want to move that in the value chain with more investments on processing, so we have closer to the final product. But we're also growing on economy on industries that are dependent. The car industry, energy, tech, batteries, and we're an essential part of the green transition, of the energy transition. So for us, it's very important to be part of the international negotiation in terms of standards, in terms of price setting, and especially in terms of like-minded countries talking to each other to have a supply chain that is not so vulnerable when someone decides to use political instruments for market dynamics.